Yeah. A take for 99, where we give you a very expensive take for a cheap price here on the show in any sport. And we get to get a response and go home. And I want to begin here. I want to tag myself in here. I'm going to go back into the NBA for this one because I thought about this last night and now I'm on the mic. The 76ers should look highly into reuniting Jimmy Butler with Joel Embiid. It's my take, man. Okay. And the reason why I brought this up was because a couple of days ago, Daryl Morey came out and talked about the drastic changes that's going to be with the team in regards to building around Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. He talked about that, and he's expecting to make some moves, right? I hear a lot of PG talk. We'll see if that's realistic or not and what's going to happen there. You know, the Clippers are trying to sell tickets with their new stadium. They're probably going to pay him his money, whatever. But also, you also had Pat Riley coming out, and he had like a speech where he talked about the contract extension of Jimmy Butler will depend on availability. And he was also critical of him in his comments that he made about the Celtics and the Knicks, right? Now, Butler, according to the Miami Herald, wants a max 2-year contract extension from the Heat to tack on to the final 2 years of his deal, which is going to probably expire around age 37. He's trying to have that retirement pension there. And I think if you're the 76ers, right, who's trying to make at least one, okay, can we start there and make at least one Eastern Conference Finals with Joel Embiid? You need to make that move, because no matter how many variations with the Joel Embiid era, the Ben Simmons Joel Embiid era, the Jimmy Butler Tobias era with Ben Simmons, the Tyrese Maxey James Harden era with Joel Embiid, or the Maxey sidekick, you know, Joel Embiid era, the best team that I thought had the golden opportunity to win a championship was that 2019 76ers team that had Jimmy Butler, that dog that channels his inner Michael Jordan in these playoffs, who isn't scared to take a shot in the fourth quarter. That was their best opportunity. It just so happened that Kawhi Leonard made a crazy shot that bounced in at Game 7, and they went on to win the championship that year. That could have been the 76ers. So I think when they made the big mistake to pay, you know, Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. Obviously, Tobias Harris scored 0 points in the closeout game. Okay, what are we doing here, right? So I think Daryl Morey needs to rewrite that wrong. Not all losses are created equal. Not every team could be like the Mavericks and lose Jalen Brunson, as great as Jalen Brunson is, and get a guy like Kyrie, and it's like not really a big drop-off because Kyrie is actually a better fit next to Luka than Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson is a better player, but I think Kyrie Irving is a better fit because of some of the things he could do off ball without being the number one. So that ended up actually working out for the Mavericks, right? And obviously that chemistry is growing. Not every team is like the Warriors where they lose to Kevin Durant and win a championship the following year, okay? The 76ers need to rewrite their wrongs and bring back Jimmy Butler to pair alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, because in the non-Joel Embiid minutes, that's when the Knicks was playing their best basketball, when he was on the bench. So you need another guy who's going to be that scorer, who's going to be that facilitator, who's going to help the guys around him while Joel Embiid is on the bench. Okay, so that's my take for 99. They need to reunite Jimmy Butler with the 76ers and Joel Embiid.
That's a great take. I think Jimmy Butler going to Philly is a great move for Philly. I think Joel Embiid needs that earpiece in his ear. Jimmy Butler is a perfect guy to give him that confidence, to boost him up. He needs that veteran presence in that locker room. I just think Joel Embiid hasn't had one since Jimmy Butler left. So I like that take a lot.
I'm actually going to disagree. I think this move would be a little bit of a panic of saying, oh, we left this guy leave 5 years ago. We got to bring him back now. I don't think that's really a way you should run your team. And honestly, I think the issue with Philadelphia in that Knicks series, and it was clear to me, was that around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, they just didn't really have a lot of guys capable of stepping up. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Tobias Harris, Leel, you mentioned it, he was an abomination. You're making $40 million a year, and you can't score a single point in game number 5. And I just think that Philadelphia, their focus needs to be building the best team around Embiid and Maxey as possible. If you're going to pay Jimmy Butler that max extension that he's seeking, I fear this team is going to turn into the Phoenix Suns and have a big three with literally no one else around them. I also think that when you have a best player like Joel Embiid, who we know has had a tough time staying healthy, I don't love the idea of pairing him with another guy in Jimmy Butler, who's on the older side and has had some real trouble staying healthy in the regular season. Now, I do think Philadelphia needs to make a move. The guy I would be looking at would be Brandon Ingram. I think he's going to be on the move from New Orleans this offseason. I think he would be at a much cheaper price, and you would have much more cap flexibility without having to pay him that max deal.
I want to respond to that real quickly here because the 76ers got questions, obviously, with their roster. You got Kelly Oubre Jr., Kyle Lowry, and Nick Batum, who's playing on expiring contracts after the season. So their season is over, their contracts are expiring. So they got to map that out as well. However, I do believe when you talk about a team with Jimmy Butler, he raises your floor. I really didn't take in consideration what the package would look like. That's something that I really looked into because it was more about me saying that the 76ers should entertain bringing Jimmy Butler back more so than me laying the framework of a trade. But if y'all want to do it, that's up to you. If anybody watching the show want to do it, that's up to y'all. I just think it's something they should look into and try to pull off if they can.
Well, yeah, they're definitely going to look into improving the roster around Embiid and Maxey, but if I'm Pat Riley, like, I'm not trading Jimmy Butler unless I get something legitimate back. And I just don't know what assets Philadelphia has to give you in return. You know, Jimmy Butler took the Miami Heat to 2 NBA Finals in 4 years. Like, if you're trading him, you're going to need to get something legitimate
back. Way to jump ship, Kenny. Way to jump ship, my brother.
But yeah, I think, if you're Philly, I would rather keep Kelly Oubre and bring in Brandon Ingram than have just bring Jimmy Butler and let Oubre go. I think he was super valuable to that team and what they did so far this year. And just pairing.
I'd rather have Jimmy Butler's dog, bro. I don't think Brandon Ingram got that dog in him. From what I be seeing, he don't have that dog in him like how Jimmy Butler does, respectfully. And I think when you have a guy that has that dog in him, that channels that, you know, inner alter ego and up his game, up his numbers in the playoffs. That's something that Jimmy Butler does. He could be averaging 15 during the regular season, and then that 15 translates to 22 in the daggone playoffs. Like, I need that guy. That's the guy that's going to elevate your roster. You know, we've seen it with a guy like Ant. You know, just that dog is going to elevate the locker room, and I think that's what Jimmy Butler brings, where I don't see Brandon Ingram bringing that.
Well, you could bring in other guys with that. Like, I just think it's a lot of, like, it's a lot of money to be paying a guy just for that dog. I think you could find other dogs for a cheaper price, but we know the microscope's going to be under Philadelphia. And most importantly, I don't think the Heat are trading Jimmy Butler. I understand why Pat Riley called him out. He had every right to do so. I don't know what he was doing, running his mouth about the Knicks and the Celtics when he was not playing. But I would be pretty surprised if Jimmy Butler is not a member of the Heat next season.
All right, who want to go next?
Oh, you, Zach.
Yeah, for my take for 99 cents, I'm going with MLB. I think Pete Alonso leaves the New York Mets in his free agency upcoming. I don't think he's okay with what's been happening over there in New York, and that's been the lack of hitting, the lack of just opportunities to bring in runners, all around. You know, just not him. Like, he's not hitting well, but he also looks unhappy in New York. Talking about Jeff McNeil, who was a batting chip, and after he got that batting chip, he's been abysmal. Sterling Marte is not the same guy as advertised as they brought in when they paid him. Brandon Nimmo, once we paid him, he ain't the same hitter as he was even 2 years ago. Francisco Lindor having one of the worst slumps of his career, but also he's starting to pick it up a little bit, but it's also demoralizing to that roster. And also the unfortunate injuries to Beatty and Francisco Alvarez, that they're both inconsistent in the lineup. Alvarez out with injury till like maybe August, and then Beatty, who has that nagging hamstring injury that's got him in and out that lineup on a daily basis. And I think Pete Alonso's sick of it. He's getting tired of just the lack of production from this lineup, despite them having so much talent. I think he winds up leaving. A team that I would say that I can say he would like to go to, it's probably a stretch, but I think the Baltimore Orioles, a young team that's been proven that they got nothing but bats all around. I think he fits perfectly with what they're trying to do over there, which is win a championship. So I think Pete Alonso will be leaving. This is Pete Alonso's last season as a New York Met, and Mets fans should enjoy it.
say a couple of things on that I find interesting. Number one, I thought Pete Alonso was going to have a monster contract here. That's been a trend in MLB where when you're about to get paid, we saw it with Aaron Judge, like you have a great contract here. And I thought at the very least that batting average would improve, and it's not. He was hitting around 220 last year, around the same this year. But I don't think he's unhappy in New York. I think Met fans need to take a deep breath and realize that David Stearns, their new GM, made the right decision of not fully investing in this core, because clearly this team, they've overachieved so far somewhat, but it's clear that they're not really ready to win anything substantial right now. The Jeff McNeil contract has been terrible. I think you could point to that as Billy Epler's worst move and the move that really caved him in during his last final years. But I don't think Pete Alonso is unhappy here, man. I just think he's struggling. And I do think that David Stearns, the guy who grew up a Met fan, knows that Pete Alonso is probably the best offensive everyday position player in the history of this franchise. He has to know how much he means to this team and this fan base. And with the amount of money Lindor's making, I just think it would be a really bad look letting him go. And maybe you could save a little money based on the start, because if Scott Boras is going to be asking for a crazy contract with this guy, I don't understand which team is going to give him. Like this slump has been terrible. Really needs to get it fixed. He really needs to get it turned around. I don't think Pete Alonso is going anywhere. I still believe in David Stearns to find a way to get it done.
All right, Zach, the mic is you.
All right, I'll go back into the NBA for my take for 99, and I've done this a lot. Anyone who's listened to me on this segment in the past knows that a lot of times on my take for 99, I will revisit a prior segment and take us in a totally new direction, and that's what I'm going to do here. We've talked about the Denver Nuggets, their struggles in this series so far against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I'm officially saying right now that dynasties in the NBA are dead. You look at the last 5 NBA champions. You have the Toronto Raptors. The year after they win the NBA Finals, they lose in the second round of the playoffs. After they beat the Warriors, you had people saying, oh, if Kawhi Leonard comes back, this could be an all-time great team. Nope, he leaves, they're irrelevant. The Lakers, the year after they win their championship, they lose in the first round of the playoffs. The Bucks, they win the championship. That following year, everyone was calling them the championship favorite. They were up 3-2 on the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and they lose Game 6. They lose Game 7. They haven't been out of the first round since. The Warriors, the year after they win the NBA Finals, they're out in the second round. And then we have the Denver Nuggets this year, the team that for the majority of the regular season, everyone called them the team to beat. Everyone called them the best team in the NBA. Everyone was calling Jokic an all-time great player, and they are on the brink of being eliminated against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just think that in the NBA and really sports right now, it's super hard to build a sustained winner in the salary cap era. It's hard to keep your top players together. We've already seen that with Denver losing Bruce Brown because they just couldn't afford him. And it's just really tough when you have that target on your back. It's really tough to get those bounces to go right 2 years in a row. And I do think that Denver, the first time they've really faced adversity in the playoffs, this group is completely folded. It's easier said than done. A lot of the times we just assume, oh, the team that won the championship this past year, they're going to do it again because they have their championship DNA. They got that championship pedigree. Nah. And to be honest, I feel a little bit similar to this in the NFL if it wasn't for the fact that the Chiefs, they're a dynasty in large part because they have the best quarterback in the league and the best coach in the league and the top defense. That's also what the Patriots had back in the day when they were running their dynasty. Unless you have that top player and that top coach, it's just really hard to build a sustained winner. And I think that's what the Denver Nuggets are learning right now. So I'm officially calling it, for the first time really in the history of the NBA, I think dynasties are dead.
I would like to respond to that, Zay, and feel free after me. I think that's a good take. I like the overall premise of the take, but I want to dive into some specifics in regards to the last teams that won the chip, right? Because, Zach, you kind of spoiled. Well, not really. I thought my take, Joe, was home pretty good, right? It doesn't change the outlook of my take. My take was good, but you try to play spoiler there a little bit. I'm going to try to play spoiler in your take, although I agree with the premise, right? Because they're younger, more dynamic. Teams have a lot of depth, especially those young teams out there, a lot of young players, right? How old is Anthony Edwards? A lot of young guys out there. SGA, I get it. So I don't really see a team dominating. But let's go to those teams that we referenced, right? The Raptors back in 2019. To me, when they lost Kawhi, Okay, that's why they didn't win a championship, right? And I think in the Eastern Conference at that time was weaker than the Western Conference. So Kawhi came back. I had reason to believe that they would have made at least the Eastern Conference Finals, where they probably would have ran to Milwaukee or one of those teams like that. The Lakers, the bubble, right? Okay, they won a championship. Who told them to trade their team after they won a championship, right? Guys like KCP, who ended up helping the Nuggets win their championship, right? You got other guys like Kyle Kuzma, who was there, that was a contributor as well. Avery Bradley, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, who told the Lakers to tamper with a roster that already won the championships. The Bucks, right? They didn't need to tamper with their roster as well. They the fools that went on to trade Jrue Holiday and allowed him to go to Boston, and they try to do this Dame pairing. And a lot of that has to do as well with the availability of Giannis. He was out last year for a couple games. That kind of gave Miami, who went on that magical run, a leg up to take that lead and obviously win that series. And then this year, obviously Giannis injury didn't play at all this year, so you got to take in consideration injuries, especially when your best player on your team, one of the best players in the NBA, is not playing. Then you go to the Warriors, and I would say to that, if they drafted well in that draft where they had the number 2 overall pick, and they could have got LaMelo, I believe it was 2 overall. I know he had a top 3 pick. They could have got LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, and they decided to go with the bust himself, James Wiseman. It wasn't a wise man, okay, when they made that move. So if they made that move for Tyrese Halliburton, they still would have had a team that would have been a contender. So the Nuggets as well, they lost a lot of dead pieces as we talked about earlier on the show. So I think there's a lot of more context in those situations on why those teams that you reference didn't go back to back. And I'll leave it at that.
But here's the thing, though, and you made some valid points, but it's all ifs. Like, if Kawhi came back, if the Lakers didn't trade their team, if the Warriors didn't draft James Wiseman, this is why it's so hard, because it's so tough to avoid all of those ifs. You need all of those things.
What ifs is a part of, but real quickly, Zach, what ifs is a part of the game, and sometimes the reason why you win a championship is because everything went right. You were healthy at the right time. You know, you got chemistry at the right time if you made a trade. Everything panned out. And we know in an 82-game calendar, not everything is going to pan out, which is why I do agree with your take. I just want to reference those contexts of information there.
Right, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, you can't rely on those ifs going right for multiple years in a row, and that's why ultimately these teams didn't repeat. And I just think it's so difficult in this salary cap era when the league has had as much talent and as much depth as it really ever has. Like, that's why it's so hard to get all those bounces and get everything to go right 2 years in a row. It's just crazy. You know, people were calling the Nuggets like the next San Antonio Spurs, you know, with all this great international talent, a team that's going to go on this crazy run, you know, 3 chips in 5 years. But again, this was the first time they've ever trailed in a playoff series, and I think they're going to fold. I think they're. And
there's no more super teams, and the CBA is changing, so you do have to take in context of super teams, because when teams were winning back to back recently of the decade, it was teams that had super teams, not these teams that we referenced, which wasn't super teams. The Raptors wasn't a super team. The Lakers wasn't a super team. The Bucks wasn't a super team. The Warriors wasn't a super team. Denver last year wasn't a super team. So yeah, when you have even out playing fields across the league with all that talent, I don't expect to see another team. Well, I'm not saying ever, but right now I think it's more parity. Yeah.
And the other thing too is, like, when you look at the history of the NBA, that's never happened. Like, the NBA has never had a 10-year stretch where there hasn't been a repeat champion. There's always been, you know, the 90s Bulls, the early 2000s Lakers, the Warriors with KD and Steph Curry, the Kareem Lakers. You know, there have just been this Larry Bird Celtics. Like, there have just been, usually every 5 or 10 years, there have been that dominant team, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
You know, I think a lot of teams, they don't go back to back, especially like the younger teams, is because of who they play the next season, right? And I think a lot of guys don't make that next jump that's needed to win. Like, we talk about the Chicago Bulls, and then like when they won those 3-peats, or we talk about even the Lakers when they won their 3-peat. The star players elevated each year. The role players got better each year, you know. And I think that's one thing. Like, we pinpointed like Derek Fisher, how he was a key to a lot of those playoffs with the Lakers. We talk about Rob O'Horey's big shot in the playoff game. We talk about It's a bevy of guys that were part of the Lakers organization that the role players had to step up. And, you know, I know I'm a big role players advocate. I always say this: role players win the playoffs and et cetera, et cetera. But when you're talking about what you need around Ant, if let's say he wins the championship this year, how could they win it next year? You have to see who they put around them next year. Because if let's say they lose Mike Conley, how could you replace a Mike Conley? You're gonna have to bring in a role player that's as good or even better in leadership wise. Or if they lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if he's gone, how do you replace him? How do you replace Cat if he leaves? So there's a lot of different things that changes if different guys alternate positions, and also you have to try to improve your team. It's never like, yeah, we're gonna run it back with the same team next year, we're gonna win it all. That's not how it works. Even the Warriors teams, those Warriors teams never stood the same and won back-to-back chips. They changed little increments of their team between role players, between who comes in and out. And that's how you saw a lot of different guys that stepped up, between the Iguodalas, the Barbosas, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the moves that you make, because not all good moves that you make is good moves. And I understand you don't want to stay the same, and nobody's saying stay the same. But when you look at the Lakers and what they did, like, they clearly made the wrong move, because they haven't been back to the final since. When they traded some of those guys, Alex Caruso, I didn't even bring him up. Like, he's one of the best defenders in the NBA. And you traded that for more offense, and it didn't even work out. Immediately, it didn't work out when you traded for Russell Westbrook. So some of these trades are not good at all. So,
and one last point I'll bring up on the Bucks too. I think they made the Dame trade as a panic move because of that Miami loss, which was, you said it, Will, like, that was triggered by the Giannis injury. So literally one injury could force you into making a dumb panic move like that, which just screws your future. And it's just crazy how the year after the Bucks won the title, they were up 3-2 on the Celtics going into game 6 of that series as really the title favorite. Jason Tatum has the best playoff game of his career, dropping 47 points on the road in an elimination game in Milwaukee to force a game 7. And then Boston hits a million threes in game 7, and the Bucks haven't been out of the first round of the playoffs since.
I mean, look, man, we could play this what if game and be here for another 2 hours, right? What if Kevin Durant's foot was on the line or wasn't on the line and it was a 3? Then the Bucks ain't winning the championship, right? What if Klay Thompson tore his Achilles and arguably the Warriors win that finals against the Raptors? So a lot of it is luck and having the benefit of, you know, just being healthy and things falling into your favor. And, you know, sometimes it don't happen the next year, you know. So, all right, fellas. That wraps up another episode of 99 Pod, and it was a good one. The game is about to be on. It's on right now, the Celtics and the Cavaliers, and I'm not trying to be so cavalier. We got to get to the game. Fellas, it was a good one. Looking forward to the next one.